Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to contribute to this motion and state that this was a constitutional imperative well executed. So well executed, Mr. Speaker, that in addition to the 3 reports that are required by the Constitution, the President gave an additional report on the business climate reforms. But in addition to that, beyond the 1 year that is required of the Constitution, the President took us through the 8 years of his presidency. That is beyond the call of duty under the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the President covered 12 key areas. We all had them. But of interest to me, first is to the extent that it covered the issue of security, including security of the person, including security in terms of the 2022 elections, but also importantly, in terms of our territorial integrity. Mr. Speaker, the President didn't cover he covered the economy, the performance of the economy, the issue of utilities, water, electricity, and efforts that have been taken towards reduction of the cost. Perhaps in future, it would bear to note that it's important to also talk about the issue of unemployment, which has become quite rampant in our country. Mr. Speaker, the President also talked about infrastructure, and we must commend the President and this government that they have tried in terms of infrastructure, especially on roads, and especially on the railway line, the SGR, and also on issues of tertiary institutions, particularly TTIs. Even though in some instances, for example, in my constituency, the roads have stalled and the TTI has stalled, but we have petitioned. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, I think at some point, other than pointing out the development in terms of infrastructure, we will also have to focus on the equity and distribution of that infrastructure. The President didn't touch on, he touched on international relations and observed an observation I agree with, that it does not bode well to just close borders because COVID will invade us anyway. It is the practices that we observe internally. But more importantly was his favorite refrain, not an inch more, not an inch less. A refrain I fully agree with. In terms of Article 10, Madam Speaker, it covers national ethos, it covers national unity, it covers issues of inclusivity and equality. So those who fault the President for having talked about what could have been gained in the BBI document are forgetting that the Constitution requires the President to talk about the national values in Article 10. You cannot talk about the national values in Article 10 if you will not talk about sharing of power, if you will not talk about equality, if you will not talk about participation of the people. It was therefore a constitutional imperative that the President talks about these things. Whether you agree or not is a different matter. For my part, I agree with the fact that he spoke about them and with the manner in which he spoke about them. It should be remembered that when the President talks of a lost opportunity, it is not a lost opportunity for the President or for those who support him. It is a lost opportunity for all of us in this country. And therefore, when the President says that the good ideas in BBI will be back, that is merely a prophecy. But it's a prophecy that must come to pass in 2 respects. One, although the Court of Appeal pronounced itself, the Court of Appeal did not pronounce itself on the substantive proposals in the BBI document. The Court of Appeal pronounced itself and focused on certain procedural issues. Those procedural issues can be addressed at any time. In any event, we cannot suppose that the Supreme Court, before whom the matter now lies, will agree with the Court of Appeal. The Supreme Court may as well set aside all the observations and orders of the Court of Appeal. Secondly, the pronouncement of the Court of Appeal cannot be a death knell to the ideas in the BBI. Ideas cannot die. Those ideas, in any event, whether we resurrect them before the next election or after the next elections, will come to pass. Lastly, Madam Speaker, as I wound up, I think that the speech was good, but it was a bit too long. Those who write the President's speech should make it a little shorter or have an abridged version and the long version. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well, and thank you, the member.